Okay, we're recording. Welcome,
Hey, everybody.
to another
Namaskaram,
Einstein
everyone.
Roundtable. Today's our first ever open roundtable. And so what we're going to do is just go person to person, see what's on their mind this week, chime in if we have thoughts about it, and then go on to the next person. So no formal topic, though. Brian did mention something he wanted to talk about. So of course I have a little slide about it because I had 5 minutes notice. So, but, well, Brian, you have a topic. Would you like to start? SpecialK.
Yeah, so I had three things I wanted
Oh,
to
you're not limiting
add.
yourself to one.
Hey,
Okay.
come on,
Yeah.
man. There is only there was one topic. We have three.
He's already breaking the rules, people. I don't know what
Yeah,
this
I mean,
is. Yeah.
it doesn't take long, So, yeah, you guys can jump in. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have to do all three right now, but so one thing is I definitely need to work on boundary setting, and I saw a good video about it recently, and I kind of made something click more. And it was talking about a boundary is something you can control. So this woman was saying, like, if you're asking someone else to change their behavior, that's not a boundary. And she was like, you're actually being controlling because no one actually has to change for you. So you can do something different from that, which is where you just say, okay, if you do X, I'm going to do Y. That's it. You just say, this is the action I'm going to take. Then if they do X, you do Y. And then you don't even have to argue. You don't even necessarily have to have a conversation about it. Like, I told you, if you did this, I'm going to do that. Like, if you keep saying this thing to me, then I'm going to, leave, or I'm going to change my number, or I'm going to block you, or whatever. And then you just take the action. And that's it. And I thought that's a good way to think about boundaries, which is something I didn't understand throughout my life. So I think that's good to bring up. Now, does anyone want to jump in there, or should I go to
I,
my
of
next
course,
one?
want to jump in
Okay.
because I
Yeah,
already
yeah.
jumped in with a slide. I love to
Okay.
draw boundaries, and the person says, "Thanks, I practiced." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, and just the concept that declaring your boundary and managing yourself in your boundary
Yeah.
is the whole job, not managing the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So acting with integrity that, look, everybody's out at 11 because I have to go to work in the morning. So it's 11, everybody out. We want to
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
longer. Oh, I'm so glad you had fun. Get out. It's 11. I have to get up in the morning. So
Yeah.
manage your own boundary is just acting with integrity with what you said. So I really love that point of view. Okay, Mr.
Yeah.
Mental Wellness Coach, what are your thoughts on boundaries,
Mm.
Zian?
Excuse me. Just had to clear my throat. I'm not sure I have too much to add to that. What Brian said sums it up very pertinently and directly. Boundaries are not, you can't, if you invest your energy and time in trying to control the other person, you're not drawing boundaries, you're being a control freak. And you're going to destroy your peace of mind, and you're going to drive yourself up the damn wall. You're focusing on things outside of you that you have no control, that you have no right to control. And that's just it. That for me indicates some degree of entitlement, and probably a whole lot of entitlement that needs to be worked through. And as I discovered maybe about a year ago, entitlement is a signifier of where we are lacking in love or respect for ourselves. We expect others to meet these needs or do things for us that we impose on them, and we're not meeting a need within ourselves first. So yeah, that's a great way to say it. Boundaries are about you controlling and mastering your own behavior rather than mastering forces, situations, and people outside of you.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. How about you,
For sure.
Jonathan? And we'll let Michaela cook the longest so she has time to think about something to share. So, Jonathan, what do you think about boundaries?
Namaskaram, everyone. Actually, for the ones that are watching, because at some point there are some humans that are going to be watching this video on YouTube. Please help us with a follow and a like. That would be very
Thank you.
helpful. If you haven't done it, why are you still watching if you haven't done that? So better do it.
Thank you for the advertisement, Jonathan.
Yes, I like the word mastering better than controlling. I really like the mastering word because it's something you can master, boundaries. And then, but there are so many boundaries. So that's also something important to take into consideration. Like, for example, my physical boundaries ends with where my fingernail ends, or other parts of my body, my hair and other parts, um, so it's important to, once you know your own boundaries, you can expand them or make them as closer to you as you need them to be. Because for some, I have met humans that they're quite boundless, if that's the word that I'm looking for.
So
But
very
that
wide
doesn't mean that it
open.
works for yeah, but that doesn't mean that it works for everyone. So the healthiest way is to understand what is it that you're comfortable with, so that you can, from there, you can actually be like, oh, I needed only this amount of like space, mental space, freedom, and everything that comes into that realm. So once you understand your own space that you need when it comes to like how much freedom do you need if you're in a relationship or with somebody else wanting to be in your life, you're like, no, like, come on, man, my boundaries, like, my fingernail, it's already ended, and you're intrusive. So then you can start pushing them away or making your own line. But yeah, that it's very important, making a distinction of, this is what I feel comfortable. And if my bubble is too big, then you can obviously join. But if I say no, that's where the boundary, it comes into play. And I am a promoter of boundaries because they are important, because it's your
courteous.
experience.
Don't you think it's courteous to let people know, oh, that's too much? I mean, because if you don't tell them,
Yes.
would they know unless you tell them?
Yes.
Well, Michaela, I have a question for you, because I came to Texas from California, and I think you came to Texas from Virginia. And in
Maryland.
Texas, one of the boundaries they violate is everyone you've met for 5 minutes is willing to give you a hug. And you're like, I don't know you. And they're like, oh, well, we just do this in Texas. And they're like, I'm in a networking meeting and I was introduced to you 5 minutes ago. What's the hug about? So do you have any thoughts about boundaries?
Boundaries. Like most things, it's just, to me, it's a human construct that we've made up. And I think boundaries are really a factor and a manifestation of your lived experiences and what triggers you or what bothers you and what doesn't. So it's very personal. It's very specific to the individual. And unless you communicate what they are, no one's going to know what they are. And so it's really me as a person, my job to communicate if I have so-called boundaries so that other people understand. And if they don't respect it, then you take action to kind of either remove yourself or take other actions. But for me, it's like, I think a lot of things around boundaries are like, things are happening to me. And in reality, I don't believe in that. I believe that things happen and then you make a story about what happened, about what it means about you. And so I think when we start to get closer and closer to the truth, we realize that boundaries don't really exist. There's no such thing. Until we start to let go of the past and we start to let go of the stories that we make up about ourselves and about other people, we're going to live in this, like, boundary to me is very, very constraining. It feels visceral for me, and I don't necessarily believe in them. That's just a hot take.
Yeah,
So.
no, I appreciate
Cool.
the hot take. We were thinking about barbecues, and I remember one where there was a very loud person, and the more beer that was consumed, the louder the person became. And he was thought of as like the very boisterous person. And some people can have this much of that, and other people can have this much of that. And I noticed there was kind of a comfortable allowance that people could go inside and not listen, and just be in a space that's quieter. And other people were egging this person on, tell that story about the such and such, it's so funny. And so people were kind of self-selecting, how much involvement they had with this sort of activity. And it just felt like there was a generous compassion that people could pick their spot and how much time they spent here. The boisterous person was allowed to be boisterous. The quiet person was allowed to go in and dish up potato salad, or whatever. People seem to, but it seemed like self-management was like the key. Know what feels right for you and do that. And then everybody was just doing what was right for them, and it just flowed.
Exactly.
Okay, Brian, that was your topic. Anything more about boundaries?
No,
I'd
but I
like-
can.
Yes,
Oh,
chime
go
in.
ahead.
Ian.
I just really quickly, I like what Jonathan had to say about going out of your way to make your boundaries known and be clear about them. Because if you're not, you're gonna build up resentment over that sort of thing, and that's normally resentment festers. You just kind of you don't really even know it's there. You tend to sweep it under a rug and pretend that it's not there, so you don't have to look at it. And that can be dangerous for your own peace of mind and your ability to connect with others and to trust yourself and even build up trust with others.
So interesting to be around people that you can trust, respect your boundaries, or respect what your choices are. You have this sort of comfort that this thing is going to be okay. So cool. Well, let's do a round robin, and Brian, we can come back because you have more topics
Sure.
if that works.
Yep.
Zian, did you have oh, I see your cat.
Yeah.
What's your cat's
what were you-
name?
What did you ask me, Myrna?
Well, first, what's the name of the cat?
Oh, this one is Persephone. Athena's over on my right, which is your left, I believe.
Cool. Well, yeah, so did you have a topic you wanted to have us chime in on today?
Yeah, so I actually sent you a link to your messenger. Maybe you could pull it up it up on your screen.
Mm-hmm.
And you could read a few things off of it, if you please.
Sure.
So the topic is unlocking. It's from one of my favorite websites that I've been going to for about a year now. I just get recommendations for things like this in my Google feed on Chrome. It's from neurosciencenews.com.
Is this the one? Am I sharing it? Unleashing Your Sixth Sense?
Yep, that's it. Exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It talks about unlocking your sixth sense and how to develop it. I didn't even know this until I read it, but your sixth sense or intuition is called neuroception. So there's proprioception, neuroception, and now we have neuroception, which I didn't know about until I read this.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it talks about how the love hormone oxytocin is connected to building up trust, and oxytocin isn't just something we experience in romantic relationships. We also get surges of oxytocin when we go through like trust building exercises with coworkers and friends in close settings where intimacy and trust needs to be developed between people in order for more flawless communication to take place and seamless coordination to happen between individuals. And it talks about how your neuroception, your intuition, it's a vital skill for people in leadership positions, life coaches, and anyone who just wants to get better at communicating and have a really good seamless understanding of how psychodynamics work in large or small groups. And it was really interesting because, as I said, I didn't even know intuition had another word for it, neuroception. And also there's one paragraph, at one point there's a paragraph that talks about how intuition is not a woo-woo science. It's actually being researched by a specific scientist. I can't remember his name. You could find it in there if you go down and you look at it. But the guy who's actually putting his time and energy into researching this has written a book about it. And there was a link also in that article that talked about how, I didn't click on it, but you could see the title of it. It said that analysis needs to be met with intuition. And that's absolutely correct, because that goes back to part of a book that I finished reading a few months ago, where they talked, the author of the book, it was this book was about, it bridged interdisciplinary concepts between neuroscience and psychoanalysis. So in one part, it talks about how we need to find creative avenues for looking at problems and how to come up with new theories about how things work within neuroscience and psychoanalysis, while also being grounded in the art of pragmatism and not getting too far ahead with our imagination. So there's an interplay between imagination and practicality, just as where with this article about neuroception, there is a dance between logic and intuition. So, and also I don't want to drone on too much longer, but I read this and I realized I need to trust my senses and my intuition a lot more, and also stop judging myself, because I'm very sensitive. I absorb energy, and then what I have a tendency to do is make the mistake of believing that I'm the one feeling that when I'm absorbing it from everybody else. I mean, I could be feeling it, but normally what I recognize is that I'm absorbing somebody else's energy, whether it's positive or negative, that energy is resonating inside of me, and I make the mistake of identifying with it. Yeah. So trust my intuition, be more mindful, and stop judging myself is really what I took away from reading this.
I really love this. Thank you. And I'll make sure that I post the link to the article in the bottom of, this video, so people can go and find out more. I want to say something. The other week when Michaela was on a call with us, our call was done, and then my phone rang, and I knew it was Michaela. I just knew it. And then when I answered the phone, she said, "You knew I was going to call, right?" And I'm like, "Yes." So I think when you talk about oxytocin, that love chemical, love of your friends, this goes on with my mother, that I'll think of her and the phone rings and it's her. She'll think of me and I call her. And it's so surprising the science is showing that maybe there's an actual love connection with the love chemical with intuition. And so fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now I just dove in, but does anybody else want to chime in on that?
I completely I completely agree with the oxytocin release. It's actually, it is the best thing you can do if you're in a relationship, especially if you're like the male. What you want to do is to release as much oxytocin, like fireworks and fireworks of oxytocin, because otherwise it's not going to work.
Yes.
So I definitely agree. But there's also like other different, it's like different kinds, because let's say I have nieces and nephews, like I have like kid nieces. You release oxytocin, they come to you, they give you like a hug, or they do something, and it releases oxytocin every time they touch you. There's a bond there. How much do you want to release? That's up to you. But that is definitely true. There's no argument on that whatsoever. It's a real thing. You have to, if you are in a close relationship, it's your responsibility to create as much release of that particular chemical in your significant other as you can possibly can.
Yeah, strengthening that bonding, and in a relationship with friends, with family, maybe close business associates over the years. Do you find that you have stronger intuition with people that you have love relationships of what family or friends or significant other? Jonathan, is there more intuition around that, or is it not?
Intuition, I would say intuition it's not oxytocin, but intuition is just I will call it gut feeling. So there's a quote that from Dan Pena. He says something along the lines of your gut feeling is like one of the most powerful things, and like that you don't basically pay attention to, like something like, it's on my Instagram. For the ones that don't know, you can go Jonathan or coaching and they will find it there. But yeah, it's something along the lines of like your intuition is like one of the most powerful tools that you can possibly have access to in this lifetime. So if your gut feeling is telling you, I don't know, man, this deal kind of sucks, well, surprise surprise, you will find out later that it was the truth. But yes, there's different, in my experience, there's different levels when it comes to family members, friends, and romantic relationships, because you can only be so attached to like so many humans, right? So the stronger the connection is, the stronger the stronger you're going to feel it in your gut. Like there's no way the only thing is that humans have the tendency to not pay attention to the feeling, or like they want to put some Tylenol on it so that they don't feel it. But the gut feeling is there, like they cannot avoid it. So yeah, that's my take on
It's fun,
gut
Zian,
feeling.
that you're showing the science is coming around. That
Yeah.
actually discovering in the brain that this works. Brian, you were going to chime in. SpecialK.
Yeah, there's a lot I could say here. I definitely agree with intuition as a valid phenomenon. If you get into the yoga stuff, like I know Jonathan, you were there, at Sagar's ashram with me and stuff. So if you get deeper into the yoga stuff, in that whole Eastern philosophy, ultimately intuition is way, way more powerful than intellect. Ultimately, if you develop it to extremes, you can kind of just know everything within yourself. That's the whole Eastern deal. That's Eastern religion, Eastern philosophy. The idea is basically ultimately self-knowledge actually ends up being knowledge of everything else. So you focus on self-knowledge because intuitively within yourself, you develop the capacity to just kind of know things just by sensing it. It's interesting, Sagar talks about knowing things like a snake. So again, we're getting into weird territory here, but he says snakes have a sense like this of people. They can sense their brain chemistry. Like they sense if you're anxious or fearful or if you're calm. They just know. Like they just know. Like instant. So there's also, I'm talking a lot of Sagar stuff right now, but he also posed another interesting theory about intuition, which is where he said sometimes intuition is actually just calculation done subconsciously.
Oh.
Meaning you still went through all the logical steps, but your subconscious just did it all.
Oh.
So in your conscious mind, you go from step 1 to step 10. Your subconscious did step 2 through step 9. A good example of that would be like chess intuition. So
Oh,
I've been playing chess a little bit recently. Sometimes grandmasters, they'll just feel like, I don't know, but I need to move this piece here. Like the rook has to go here. I don't know why. They can't
Mhm.
explain it because the subconscious has taken over because they've played 50,000 games and the subconscious calculated a bunch of things and they just kind of know. So sometimes that's another like theory science could explore for what intuition is. That's a little more on the like rational kind of like more toned down, like not super spiritual side of things. Like they could look into that. But I also think, you know, bridging the gap between logic and intuition, I tend to think of this as synchronizing the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So, I mean, you can look at it that way. And you can also pair that as bridging the gap between like art and those types of things and science, or, you know, reasoning and math and art and, you know, beauty and those kinds of expressions. How do we synchronize all of this as a society so we can have all of this like thriving and working well, not just one type be dominant and other like fields of human expression being suppressed? Basically, we really want it all to come out, right? In a beautiful, wonderful way. So from a yogic perspective, that's, you do that within yourself. You can do alternate nostril breathing, which helps to synchronize the left and right hemispheres. You can do other practices. You can also look at this as synchronizing masculine and feminine energies is another way to look at this. Some people might find that offensive or whatever, but I mean, it's traditionally, that's how yoga looked at that. So.
well, I wanted to invite Michaela
Yeah.
in because
Yeah.
Michaela and I had a conversation once about how she was getting ready to execute an entrepreneurial deal and her stomach was like, this is bad. Don't do this. And she's like, I want to talk to you about Myrna because my brain says this makes sense. And my stomach's like, don't do this. And I'm trying to rectify what is my body or my intuition telling me? I said, I think we have to go with your gut, Michaela. I think, do you want to have some feedback about that?
Thank you for bringing up the gut. I think, as we know now, the gut is kind of the second brain.
Yeah, yeah.
And it communicates with our larger brain constantly, right? So there are pathways there. And it's very telling. Your gut is very telling. And I think that listening to your gut is not just like a saying, but it really is something to take very seriously. Especially now that we consume things that are not so healthy and we put so much stress on our gut. It can certainly get suppressed and downplayed, but it's a really important factor in intuition and really a sense of knowing that Brian was talking about. Yeah, I think the gut is absolutely vital in this idea of intuition. And from a metaphysical standpoint, the way I think about it is like, if we look at like the moon, for instance, right? The moon impacts the tides, it impacts the weather. And it would be naive to think that it doesn't impact us from an energetic perspective, right? So we're impacted by the universe, and then in reverse, we impact the universe, and therefore we impact other people. And so because we have this thing called oxytocin, again, it would be naive to think that we don't make impact on other people and people don't make impact on us. And the more things that release oxytocin between us physically and emotionally, the more closer we get to those people and the more kind of our wavelengths, our gut, our brain sort of become more in sync with each other. I think it's a pretty natural state of the human condition because we're meant to be social. So
Thank you for that. I think some people are more in touch with their bodies. You know, they're naturally a little more present in their bodies. And some people are more in touch with their heart, that feeling nature or that empathy. And some people are maybe more driven by their brain, but I think intuition shows up in different ways. And You know, it's
Mhm.
wonderful that there's now a scientific way that says trust some of this. It's a real thing. So thanks for bringing that up, Zian. Any final thoughts from you on your topic?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I kind of wanted to round it off with what Jonathan and Brian had to say. So Brian, he mentioned thinking, bridging the gap between thinking and intuition. I learned the other day, I read about this, it was in a different article. It said that thinking is a slow, deliberate process that gradually plays out over time, whereas intuition is like almost the speed of light. So
Yeah.
there was another quote that I read, as a matter of fact, that I'd like to bring into this, that read something to the effect of an expert is one who does not need to think. He knows. So intuition is just pretty much instant knowing, whereas thinking actually has to take place over a period of time in order to reach a certain conclusion and understand something better, or with the intention of understanding something better. And in the article about neuroception, they actually mentioned something called expert intuition. So there are practical ways to build this, as I've talked about. There are ways that you can actually practice this, and through specific processes that you have kind of narrowed down. And also round this out with what Jonathan said, oxytocin isn't just about building a sense of trust for others, but it builds a sense of trust for your own ability to judge and discern what's around you and make sense of the world. So where was I going to go with this? What kills intuition is stress and cognitive overload. So make sure you take time to develop a self-care routine, self-love routine, and because if you don't, that will dim the lights on your intuitive spectrum.
Yeah.
That's so helpful. I think Brian, Zian just gave you a video idea for life design, and that's developing your
Oh, yeah.
intuition. Uh-oh, I think,
Mhm.
Zian, we just signed you up for that video.
For sure. Let's do it.
Well, do you have a preference, Jonathan or Michaela, who might go next?
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Michaela, do you have a thought you'd like us to chime in around?
Something a little bit more fun. I did not love Star Wars growing up. I did not watch it. and the reason I bring that up is because Star Wars is very fundamental to a lot of people's cultural identities, if you will. And
my worldview is Star Wars. George Lucas
yes.
designed my worldview.
And so I almost took pride in, like, I didn't take part in that. I didn't like it. I never liked it. I don't understand it. But what I'm realizing now is that there's a fundamental piece in the zeitgeist and the cultural phenomenon that is this world now that I'm missing because I did not live that experience, and that I wasn't involved. And my question is, like, is it important to be involved in the cultural phenomenons that are happening? Is it better to be removed, or is it better to be sucked in and having conversations about things that are kind of silly, like Star Wars or Game of Thrones? Like, what is the importance of involving yourself in the zeitgeist of cultural phenomenons of today? Or is it better to kind of remove yourself? I don't know the answer, but I know that there's a piece that's missing for me right now because I wasn't part of that culture. And there are people making references now that I'm like, I don't get it. And there's this like disconnect now. So I'm curious about that.
I can teach you to talk backwards like Yoda. But I really love this idea about a zeitgeist and you know, the cultural exchange. there was a funny meme once where guys were exchanging movie lines. And it's from the movie 300, or it's from a Star Wars movie, or it's from a superhero movie, or something in a Batman movie. And all the guys get the references right away and they understand it. And so, and then this woman chimes in and she wants to play too. So her movie line was, "My favorite emotion is when you mix laughter with tears." And they looked at her like she had two heads because, of course, they hadn't seen the movie. And they didn't know why that would be the movie quote, because it wasn't cool and had no action. And what? So it just kind of demonstrated that some of this is, yeah, very particular to your group of friends or to the time you grew up. So you know all the 80s movies lines, but maybe you don't know the 2010 movie lines. But yeah, it's sort of like you get this chance to instant bond. You know, when you share this quote and like, oh yeah, that's from fill in the blank movie from Star Wars. The force is strong with you, Michaela. So I love that conversation. Who would like to chime in next?
I mean, I could say a lot about this. It's crazy that you bring up Star Wars because actually the same thing happened with my pool coach, which is crazy. So one time I was driving him. He didn't drive. He just said, "I don't drive." So he would take trains or he would get a lift. And I was driving him to the pool hall and I started talking about Star Wars. And he was like, "I never saw it." And I was like, "What the F?" I was like, I was like, "What?" He's like, "I told you, dude, all I ever did was play pool. I don't care." He said the only time I ever bought a TV was to watch Mike Tyson just dominate people in the ring. And then when Tyson stopped fighting, I got rid of the TV. So that was who he was, right? He was this type of guy, like super autistic about pool. That's really all he cared about. And he told me, he was like, "Dude, I didn't live life. I lived pool." He's like, I learned about life from other people who came to the pool halls. That's how I learned about life. That's how I know what Star Wars is. Like, I just never like, so it's funny that you bring that up, but I mean, I like Star Wars. I like Star Trek as well, but I think it's good to participate in the culture as long as it's working for you. Like, if you would really get something out of being a part of that cultural like tapestry, that cultural vibe, then it's good to do. For me, I mean, I'm traveling now. I left American culture. Like, in my feeling, American culture just doesn't do much for me anymore. I'm not trying to knock it. Everyone should do what they want. I'm kind of over it. I was super bored of it. Like, I needed to travel. I needed to do other things. But when I was there and I was into the culture, I loved things like Star Wars or other TV shows or whatever. And I love talking to people about it. And because I was into the culture, like once I was like, I'm kind of over this. I need to travel. I need to do something else. Then I wouldn't try to like learn all these pieces of American culture now, because it sort of stops serving me at a certain point. So that's how I would answer that question. But anyone else want to jump in?
I never watched Star Wars.
Oh,
Okay. Another one.
But the funny thing is, okay, so this is when it becomes interesting, because let's say that I'm being judged, and then everybody says, "Oh, this human, he says he has never watched Star Wars, but he knows who Chewbacca is." I'm like, of course I know who the fuck Chewbacca is. This is this guy that looks like a big.
it's the walking carpet guy.
Yeah,
Walking
it's
carpet
like
guy.
yeah, he looks like a golden retriever, but like bigger and like not as cute. So, but it's interesting, yeah, and but again, it does give you a sense of like belonging. You cannot deny the fact that it does give you a sense of belonging, even if you do not agree with the whole American culture, which is all Hollywood movies. If you happen to agree with one big one, then you have a sense of like a community, even like birthday parties, Christmas parties, yes,
Yeah.
Halloween parties, like everything all year round. Like the anniversary of the first movie from the 1800s. Who knows when they came out? Like, you know.
Yeah,
I do
it
think
is a shared experience. Yeah.
yeah, and you can feel left out of the zeitgeist a little bit when everyone's trading movie lines or they're trading the concepts, and you're like, yeah, is that a Star Wars thing? Yeah, I didn't do Star Wars. And then yeah, I think there's a judgment factor, like, so I can't talk Star Wars with you. That's correct, you cannot. So well, Zian, do you have some thoughts about,
yeah.
or Brian, please pitch in.
Just real quick, I was just gonna say the same thing happened with Game of Thrones. Like, if you didn't watch, everyone's pressuring you to watch it. Type of thing happened, and people haven't seen Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad a little bit was like that, but Game of Thrones more so. But I was just gonna add that in. Zian, you wanna jump in?
Yeah. It. I feel that it is. You know, you don't just like take an interest in every single cultural motif that revolves around a really big TV show like Game of Thrones or something like Star Wars, but you pick and choose what you want to get involved in, what you take an interest in. I mean, I guess you can get involved in all of it, but then that takes up a lot of your time. So for me, you just got to pick and choose what's interesting and what you really want to put your energy into being a part of, where it comes to these communities that invest in shows like Game of Thrones, Star Wars, as Brian said, Breaking Bad, whatever else it is. And you through being connected to communities and watching these shows and these movies that play out in different series over years and stuff, you start to understand how these themes unfold inside of your daily life as an individual, and how you embody these aspects of behavior and these dynamics that are present within these shows and these movies. In some way, you embody these things because it resonates with these things resonate with you for some reason, and that's because there are things about these characters that you are playing out in your own behavior and psychodynamics, and you get to, and it's also important because there's a sense of belonging and community that comes with interacting with people who invest their time and energy in the same things that you do, and your identity becomes intertwined with these cultural motives and whatnot. So there's a sense of bonding, and then oxytocin that gets built up when you connect with other people who are on more or less the same wavelength, even though they might have. I'm sorry, my cat she's messing with my background right here. You get to build up a sense of oxytocin that comes with interacting with people who take an interest in the same things that you do, and you might disagree on certain aspects overall. And even if you do, you get to understand different perspectives, but overall there's a bond and a connection that is built up between you and other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so fun. Well, okay, Jonathan, now you and Michaela are not Star Wars people, but
Yeah, you guys,
what would you like to chat with us
bonded over
about?
that.
How can we chime in with you, Jonathan?
That's easy. I was hearing some word that I forgot, but it sounded like psychocybernetics. Zian was mentioning it.
Wow.
So psychocybernetics, it's actually a very ancient, it's a very old school term. It sounds fancy, but honestly, it came out before I was born, so it's been older than I am.
Older than 30, my Lord. It's ancient science. I think they wrote it in Sanskrit 30 years ago, Jonathan.
It's a very simple, it sounds like very like fancy, but it's very simple. Psychocybernetics was written by a plastic surgeon. So my topic was self-image, or is actually, because it comes down to how you see yourself. You can call it psychocybernetics and go fancy and try to have people having to read a complete book on the topic, or you can just call it as it is. It's just self-image, and how do you see yourself in the mirror, and when you close your eyes, and when you are by yourself in the shower. So psychocybernetics is this guy. So basically, he was a plastic surgeon. I'm sure because of the timeline, he's probably dead by now. I'm assuming. I don't know. So this guy, he wrote this book. The smart thing that he did, and I must give him a lot of credit, is that he realized that when humans came to him for a plastic surgery that they did not actually need it, let's say, for example, they just wanted to have a bigger breast or a bigger ass, he will be like, no, you don't need it. I won't do it. He was like, you just need to work on your self-image. So he became more of like a psychologist, psychiatrist, and that kind of thingy. And then he started noticing that the only humans that actually improved their self-image was the ones that were like completely like destroyed, like the ones that had to have like a complete recovery of like their facial structure, their bodies. But the ones that just wanted some fancy thingy, they didn't improve anything. They just came back within the next 2 years and they wanted to fix the next best thing. So I believe that it's important to have a healthy self-image, because how you see yourself, the world is going to reflect that upon you, whether you like it or not. So if you're unconscious about how you actually see yourself every time you wake up, you are actually forgetting that the whole world is going to see you as like that every time. And it's going to make you feel things, and it's going to mess with the reality, because that's the subconscious belief that you have. So impacting the self-image, I believe it's extremely important. To do that, there's many ways. I will use an orgasm technique, which is something we can get into in another topic. But there
Another
is
video, maybe
that's
on
for
the
another. Yeah,
platform.
that's a long.
Yes, yes.
That's a very
This is
long.
a rated PG show, Mr. Jonathan.
But yes, improving your self-image, like just the way you see yourself, it creates an impact everywhere. Even the dogs behave different with different humans. Like the same dog behaves different. So the way you see yourself has such a great impact. And I believe that we have to make the best mirror for ourselves.
Yes.
So self-image, it's very, very important.
I really love your sharing that, you know, how other people see you is really reflective of what you're projecting out there to them. And, you know, I read a study once, I'm sure it was in a magazine, that said they showed people a series of pictures, different ages, different, you know, male and female. And the first series of pictures, nobody was smiling. And the second series of pictures, everyone was smiling. And they said, just pick out the 3 most beautiful people. They were smiling pictures. And it's exactly the same nose, the same hair, the same eye color, the same everything. But the one that's smiling is prettier or more handsome. And because we're responding, their glow is coming out, and you sort of respond in the image to their internal, oh, they're happy. And they didn't do plastic surgery. They just were in a good mood and were smiling, and they were prettier or more handsome. So I love that you ask people to examine, yeah, the self-image. That's wonderful. Who wants to chime in on this?
Yeah, I think that's really important. Actually, kind of leads to which is like I want to talk a little bit about manifestation, because I try to tell everyone about manifestation stuff. But in manifestation, one of the, yeah, I try to teach this to everyone because I think everyone should know. But basically it's important. Just like what Jonathan's saying is important. That's also important. I think everyone should know that too. So in some of the manifestation circles, they teach that one of the keys to manifesting circumstances in your life that you want is self-love. The idea is that the universe is a mirror. A lot of like spiritual teachers talk about this. So how you feel about yourself, what you think, what you feel, your experiences are going to mirror that to a large extent because they are responding to your energies. Therefore, it's going to be a mirror of like the state you're in. That's how you see yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you think, what your beliefs are, all whatever the internal cluster of energies and feelings is that's unique to each person. That's largely what you're going to see on the outside. Whether or not you believe that it attracts things to you through like law of attraction or manifestation principles, even if it's just people you meet responding to you, it would actually still be true to a large extent because people are going to respond to how you present. What else can they respond to? They're going to respond to the vibe they get off you. So therefore, by changing your internal state, all those internals, potentially you can get people to respond to you completely differently. Your whole life is going to be different. They respect you more, they like you more, they connect and bond with you more. That'll open up a million opportunities for relationships, job opportunities, connections, like whatever. That can change your whole life there. So that is huge. I totally agree with Jonathan on that.
Great. Thank you for chiming in. Zian, do you have thoughts about image and maybe self-love?
Yeah, I do. Like, so I talked about how I'm very sensitive and I pick up on people's energy like that sometimes before I even realize it. When somebody's nervous and they walk by me, or I'm like going through a grocery store, wherever I am going about my day, I can feel it. I can pick it up on them. And also, just to be reasonable and fair, almost nobody on earth is 100% totally calm or just carefree. We all have some level of tension or anxiety, friction, whatever you want to call it, built up inside of us. So sometimes there's a healthy balance between being relaxed and having a little bit of tension. But I feel like far too many people have more tension and anxiety than they do feelings of relaxation swimming around in their nervous system. So you can pick up on that. I mean, when you have developed that sense of neuroception for the world around you, you can feel that, and you can sense when someone is more anxious than they are relaxed, or they're more relaxed than anxious. And like, okay, so an example would be sometime I might pass somebody up walking down the sidewalk or going through a park, wherever, and I just walk. I don't say anything. I'm just out, just enjoying my day, like paying attention to what's around me more so than other people. And the dog will, and this person might have a dog with them, and the dog will bark. Dogs tend to bark out of anxiety, and sometimes that's an indication of like this person's attachment style. This person has an anxious attachment style, and their dog is responding to you out of anxiety because this person is looking for connection. That's what's going around in there. That's where their nervous system is at as a default. They have an anxious attachment style, and they unconsciously seek means to feel validated and connected to the world around them. So their dog responds to you in the same sense by barking out of anxiety. I think it was Brian who said it, or Jonathan. I think, yeah, it was Jonathan who said it. A dog will respond to different people. The same dog will respond to different people in different ways because of where you're at in your consciousness and what kind of energy you project outward without even you knowing it. And a lot of people would say that it's victim blaming to say that there's something in us that's attracting negative or abusive / narcissistic personality types, but it's not. If you want to look at it that way, that's fine. But people who say that lack context. This is the way that I think about it, and I actually read something on Instagram that reflected how that works without victim blaming or taking the victim blaming aspect out of it. It said that whenever you find yourself in a situation or a conflict with somebody, or there's just negative energy between you and somebody else, consider that you're in that situation, that energy is arising with the intent to generate consciousness. So it's not a matter of victim blaming to say that there's something in us that's attracting something that we don't like outside of us. It's those situations that we find ourselves in are meant to generate consciousness, and so that we can understand what's happening inside of us and develop a closer relationship to ourselves and ultimately the world around us.
Mm. Yeah, no, very interesting. Hey, Michaela, I'm going to loop you in because I'm wondering, in the Pilates work that you do, if there's a different result orientation for people who are engaged in Pilates, which is difficult and very powerful for the body, because they want to be optimally healthy or they want to look good in yoga pants. And so do you find a difference in your clients, some that are doing it just for image or so their clothes fit better or they're more attractive, and those that are like, I've got to have a strong immune system, I want my bones to have the right density as I get older? Do you see any difference in people that are more image dominated or more health dominated in your Pilates experience?
It's not a fair question for me because most of my clients are the former. They are very health conscious. They're a little bit older, really trying to improve their health. Not so much image focused. It's the style Pilates that I teach is traditional Pilates, so it's just a very different style. It's one-on-one, or it's 1 to 2 or 3 people, and these folks are trying to look for longevity more than anything else. So I don't teach those classes, right? Those 1 to 20 people. And so that's, I think, where you find more of the image conscious people. But what I wanted to say about this is that self-esteem establishes in childhood. By the age of 5, I think children have their sense of self established by the age of 5, and then it continues and iterates over time as you grow into adulthood. So for the parents out there, I think it's absolutely vital to make sure that you're aware of that and that you encourage your children. And the most important thing you can do is allow them to fail and show that they're valued regardless of whether they make failures, whether they win or lose at something, is to show that they're valued at all times. And I think that's a fundamental key in establishing a sense of self-worth. And then as an adult, I think, you're a product of your childhood. And so if you don't have a high sense of self-esteem, it's probably because things have happened in childhood to kind of affect that. And so I think it's just important to acknowledge that, and it's not your fault, right, necessarily. But there are certainly things you can do, as Brian pointed out and others have pointed out, to sort of manifest a different way of being in the world. But that just takes a lot of work, and just be kind to yourself that, like, it's okay. Like, we all have different lived experiences, and it's just it's not easy to improve your self-esteem if you've sort of been knocked down as a kid and have to kind of rebuild that. And manifestation is extremely powerful, and really it's a way of being in the world, and then creating a possibility of being a different way in the world, and then living into that possibility is, I think, how you improve your self-esteem. So.
I just wanted
sure.
to mention something between because just something between self-worth and self-esteem. I believe that self-worth it's a great thing to work with, but self-esteem, everyone has to be very careful. Like the other day I watched this Miss Alabama 2024. She was full of self-esteem, but full of other like stuff. So it's like, come on, you have to be careful because you can be with the highest self-esteem on the planet, but that doesn't make you like, it doesn't even impact your self-worth from the core. So
to understand
yeah,
the
there is a
difference
fine
between
line.
the two.
There is a fine line between having a healthy self-image and just wanting to change everything without having to like do the work. That is a fine line between, like, yes, you have to be very, and that's why there's many tools. And even your God is going to tell you this is not self-esteem, this is you being like, this is nonsense. Yeah, this is you. Yeah, like you're like 400 pounds, you cannot be Miss Alabama. Like this is not self-worth, this is just something completely like different, you know.
I think you have to understand, especially perfect people like me, it's just important to know that we have to let other people know about our perfection, and it can be taken the wrong way. So it is a fine line. I would agree with you.
It is so.
Well, anybody else want to chime in on this, or can we end with my little thing? Zian.
Just really quickly, I like what Jonathan had to say about self-esteem, and if I could say it more precisely, what he's talking about is healthy self-esteem versus pathological self-esteem. And
Criminal, pathological, criminal self-esteem, no. Positive self-esteem, yes.
Narcissists, self-serving individuals with self-serving bias, criminals, cops who exhibit criminal behavior, dirty cops, and people who just are abusive and out of touch with the nature of their own personality and energy. You can have healthy esteem, or healthy self-esteem, but a lot of people, I find, their self-esteem is not grounded in reality. It's grounded in grandeur and how great they are and how stupid everybody else is, who triggers these feelings of inadequacy and insecurity that are latent and stuck in the nervous system. And then they're constantly repressing these feelings of inadequacy, distracting themselves with how lonely and disconnected they are by tearing everybody else down and then building themselves up.
Yeah, I do think you're so right, both of you, to say there's a fine line and a balance that needs to be done. And but I love, Michaela, that you're inviting people to explore their self-worth and maybe the roots of that, you know, from their lived experiences in childhood. Please go ahead, Michaela.
Yeah, I have to disagree with, Zian, is that how do you say?
Zian.
Zian, sorry. You say a lot of people. I think that's an overgeneralization.
All right, let me be more specific. Far too many people.
Okay, fair.
Okay.
So I think there's a spectrum of self-image, right? Lives on a spectrum. You have narcissism on one end, and then the opposite. And there's levels of that, right? And I think that it's hard to say that far too many people are living in this warped perception of their self. I think people have moments of that, but I don't think that it's just like their overall state of being. I don't know. I think those are more outliers than the norm.
I think in the modern world, the outliers are the ones we see on the YouTube shorts or TikTok, you know, those outliers. And so I saw one example that I was telling my friend about the other day. a woman who had very dramatic face tattoos, like her whole face. And she was on TikTok. She was maybe 25, something like that, complaining that there was some kind of prejudice against tattoos because she couldn't find a customer-facing job. And they wouldn't tell her it was her face tattoos, but they wouldn't hire her either. But there wasn't any kind of accountability or personal ownership of who put the tattoos on your face. And why did you think it was okay to get it, you know, that people might not want to hire you for your customer facing job? You're going to be in a call center or you're going to be in a tattoo parlor. You should do customer facing in a tattoo parlor where people celebrate tattoos, but you limited your options with the choices you made. But instead, on the TikTok video, it's everybody else's prejudice against her. And she's just in full expression and it should be okay. So I do think there is a place for accountability and understanding what's acceptable. And then a place of, yes, you should have full expression, maybe not on your face if you need a job in the world. So I don't know. I think all of us see so many things on social media and it's kind of pumped up and highlighted rather than how much of it really is in the general population. Did you want to chime in, Brian?
Oh, I'm not sure what to say to that. Nothing really comes from like jumps out to me at the moment.
Okay, I thought
Maybe
you
I can jump back in if someone else wants to. Yeah.
Okay.
I also think it's cultural, right? Because I think it's cultural because in the States, we value the individual,
Yes.
right? There's a huge emphasis placed on the individual, but there's other cultures, for instance, in Japan and other places where the community is more important.
Yes.
In certain Latin American cultures, community is more important. And so it's where the emphasis is placed is where I think the mind will go, right? And so if you place a huge emphasis on just the individual, then of course you're gonna have more people who are narcissistic by nature, right? And so to me it's cultural, I think.
Great.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
completely agree with that and with Zian, because what Zian was saying is that we live in United States. I mean, well, Brian, it's somewhere else, but we cannot not see that we are living in a place where humans, the majority, I will actually say, I don't know how much percentage Zian was talking about, but I will take it to 90%. They live in this fantasy land of like, this is me and I am worth this, and like which is we were talking, it's okay to be like to have self-worth, but there's a fine line between working on yourself and just for the sake of like you thinking, just because you think, I mean, that you are worth this much, that's a complete different story. And that's the distortion that we are experiencing right now in this country. As humans, because they are being so self-centered, as Michaela said, they're so self-centered that they have no other, like, they don't want to take any accountability.
Or
And
they're
because
missing
they,
a frame of reference. Like,
yeah,
you know, as she said, in maybe an Asian
it's,
country or Latin country, nobody would think to cover their face with tattoos.
it will be like me saying, I know Chewbacca. I am a expert on Star Wars because I know who Chewbacca is. It's the golden retriever that is cute. And then everybody else that knows Star Wars is gonna be like, no, dude, like that's not how it works. And I'll be like, yes, because my self-esteem tells me that Chewbacca is a character from Star Wars, and I am an expert because he's brown. And then everybody's gonna be like, what in the, that's not how it works, but that's the reality that we are currently living in. So yes.
Well, no, I appreciate that. And I guess, you know, as Michaela, you mentioned, people that are engaged in personal development or self-development, whether it's physical like Pilates or in another way, you eventually find your way back to your center. You eventually find your way to, I've made some of these decisions and these are the outcomes, and I could make new decisions and have different outcomes. But people find their way across the spectrum as they do, right? So part of what we do at A Life Designed to encourage people to go find a journey to your best life, you know, what that looks like for you. But okay, well, I have the last topic. I saved the last one for me. And my topic is to talk about simple pleasures. I heard someone say the other day that life is for the living. And so sometimes we postpone moments that can be joyous or fun. And I was at a little 4th of July celebration. I'll have you know, I made Texas Coca-Cola cake with Mexican Coca-Cola. Okay. So Mexican Coca-Cola is made with cane sugar bottled in Mexico, the old school way that they used to make Coca-Cola. And so we did a taste test around the table, and everyone could tell the metallic aftertaste of the American Coca-Cola that you get in the little, refrigerator case at the end of the grocery aisle. And the Mexican Coca-Cola in the glass bottle with the metal pop top, it tasted different. And then we turned it into Coca-Cola cake. And so the little kid said, the cake doesn't taste like Coca-Cola. Said, we know it tastes like chocolate and frosting. Then the older people around the table told stories around 4th of July celebrations in the past, or what they're enjoying about life right now. And I just was reflecting on, there can be simple pleasures. And so life is moving really fast. Things are really complicated. In my business, they keep wanting me to learn new software, and I resist mightily. And so sometimes you just want to carve out some time for some simple pleasures with people you care about. And so I don't know if you guys want to share anything that might have happened for you recently, but I encourage all of you to remember life is for the living, and we can also have a little fun with friends or family.
All right. Yeah, I'll jump in here. No, I totally agree. You got to enjoy the simple things. So I'll tell you a story from my pool coach. He would say stuff like, you got to enjoy tying your shoes. He was like, he's like, that's a moment in your life, man. What, you don't care? Whose life is this, bro? You don't care? This is your fucking life. You better fucking enjoy that. And all those other small moments. You got to enjoy putting your keys down on the nightstand. What are you doing if you're not? I mean, he was really seriously saying that. And I agree. So another thing I was going to talk about, which kind of connects to this, is I was watching a Bashar video, which I talk about sometimes. That's this guy who channels this alien entity or whatever called Bashar. And he has a technique he recommends to people, which is every moment you can follow your highest excitement or your highest passion.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting because he's not saying this to mean like, if you love pool, just play pool 24 hours a day. He's saying in every moment, there's a series of choices of how you can behave. Choose the one that gives you the most passion or the most excitement or the most pleasure. It can literally be the way you pick up a coffee cup. It can be the way you walk, because you can walk with different styles.
Mm-hmm.
Walk in the way that makes you feel the most passionate, the most alive.
Mm-hmm.
You can do this all the time. This can be like a moment to moment. You could call it a spiritual practice. It's also just like a happiness practice. The way you talk to someone, the way you're talking to someone, like, how could you do it in the way that you're most passionate about, that you're most excited about? You can always choose this every moment. And this state can build up to where you're becoming more excited. You're becoming more passionate. You're feeling more alive. You're becoming more happy as you go through your moments. So I think enjoying the simple pleasures is key. Adding as much passion and excitement to even our ordinary moments is key as well. And so that's what I would say.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on simple pleasures they might have enjoyed recently? Okay, Zian.
So I do want to talk about simple pleasure from my own perspective, and then but first I want to connect it back to what Jonathan said. I can respect and even understand the perspective of enjoying the simple act of tying your shoes and little things like that. I get that and I respect it. However, I feel that that's a bit extreme, because then that whole philosophy kind of meanders into the territory, not kind of, but it does, in a particular way. It meanders into the territory of toxic gratitude, where you're replacing excessive amounts of gratitude with the practical need for self-reflection and understanding what it is that you don't like about a situation and what it is that you do like about a situation in order to gain clarity, rather than sitting here in this level of disconnection from reality and suppressing negative emotions that you absolutely need to deal with. So that I wanted to say. And then as far as simple pleasures on my end, I'm about to get ready. After we're done with this, I'm going to make some breakfast, finish my stretching, and I'm going to go on this badass walk that I'm doing for the third time now. A few weeks ago, I went out for a walk after breakfast on Father's Day that I had with my dad and a friend. And I walked. I wish I could show you exactly, like even on Google Maps, but it's a walk through where I live in La Costa Valley of Carlsbad. And I travel through the golf course on the Omnia Resort 2 or 3 times. There's just dips and valleys and mountains and hills that you go all throughout. It's really cool. It's so beautiful. The site is just the beauty is grandeur, and it helps me get out of my head. I'm about to walk, I think, further than I have both 2 times. As I said, this is the 3rd time, so I'm about to walk a lot farther today than I have. Like, I think over 10 miles. Helps me get out of my head. There's an endorphin rush the whole way. I'm going to go down, before I actually start my walk, I'm going to go down to the grocery store across the street and get some lunch, some sour Jelly Belly jelly beans. And I might meet up with my dad. I think I might walk halfway to my dad's house from where I live. So I'm in Carlsbad in La Costa Valley, and he lives in San Marcos. I'm going to walk probably halfway and maybe call him and ask him if he wants to meet up at a park that he can walk up to from his neighborhood. And yeah, I've kind of got my whole day mapped out. I'm going to bring my speaker with me. I'm going to chill out at an elementary school called La Costa Middle, I can't remember if it's a middle school or elementary school, but I'm planning on chilling out there after I cross a certain section of the city. And my whole day is planned out, and I want to do this. I want to be able to do this once every week, every 2 weeks, if not every week. And it's just, I wish I could bring somebody with me on this adventure, because it is a full-on adventure. It's one of the best adventures you could go on through the city, with respect to, there's another, like, I don't want to go on for too long, but I'm thinking of one of my other favorite adventures is there's a hiking trail around another part of Carlsbad called Calavera Hills. So you got Calavera Lake out there, and that's kind of in Oceanside, like that's Tri-City, Oceanside, Vista, Carlsbad. So the trailhead starts over by a park called Oak Riparian, and you can see everything. It's beautiful. So there's what I'm going to do today is one of the best adventures that you could go on through the city, and I'm sore, I'm tired, my feet are sore, and I'm tired at the end of the day, but I feel good because I got to release my energy, and I haven't done this enough over the course of my life. So yeah, a simple pleasure like going on a walk, no matter how long or short it is. For me, preferably, I like going on long walks so I know where certain streets cross and connect. I like to know where everything is, and I absolutely need to know where certain streets connect. So I have a visual map in my head of how, like, all this, like how you can just get through different parts of the city. So simple pleasures for me is a nice long walk throughout the city.
That sounds so fun. I know people that do 50-mile bike rides, or they do 3 hours swimming in the ocean, or yeah, to kind of really put your body in a place that you get exercise and outdoor sun and fresh air. Thanks for sharing. I hope you have a really wonderful walk today. Does anybody
Thank
else
you.
want to chime in about simple pleasures?
50 miles sounds like a workout. It doesn't sound simple.
Well, if you're on a bike, it's about a day, and bikes go pretty far. But yeah, so I don't do 50-mile bike rides, but I know people that do. And they do them in groups. You know, they meet up at a place and then they go a route. And there are the bikes that, you know, weigh like 14 ounces. You can, you know, lift them with one hand. So there's really no weight. It's just your body weight through space. But yeah, I see a cigarette there, Jonathan. So is one of your simple pleasures tobacco, my friend? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, organic tobacco or like simple tobacco is one of my pleasures. I have many simple ones. Among them, tobacco is one of them. And you just reminded me, and I was like, it should be better to express it more than like saying it. It's like it's so simple. Of course, this is for everyone. What about if you have many simple pleasures, but if you combine all of your simple pleasures, do everybody thinks that there has to be a point where you have to choose one pleasure for today and then you reserve the next one for tomorrow? Because if you just give in to every single pleasure, then I have so many.
And you eat
Right?
ice cream for breakfast and you have to
Yeah.
start doing Pilates with Michaela because
And then
your
you
body
have to
stops
work
working.
out.
Yeah. Well, very
So
good.
Cool.
So, Michaela, do you want to share a simple pleasure or chime in on ours?
Yeah. I like what Jonathan said. He took out the word simple and just said pleasures, my pleasures. I think a simple pleasure is relative to the person, right? Because to Brian's point, there are people who can't tie their shoes. They have back issues or they don't, you know, they're numb in their feet. So that may not be simple for some people. And so I think simple is a relative term. And I think Brian's point is just take some time to enjoy the things that you're doing in your life, whatever they may be. And just have gratitude for the ability to be able to do whatever routine or mundane things you do in your life. Because to his point, like what else is there, right? So yeah, taking a walk sounds like a very lovely, awesome adventure. And but for some people, the ability to tie their shoe, maybe as a 3-year-old, would make them very excited and feel like a win, you know? Yeah, I think it's really just taking some time and not rushing through life, I think is important.
Another point that I wanted to make for the ones that don't get my point, because you mentioned, a cigarette. Yes, it's tobacco. But with hypnotherapy, you can actually stop smoking if you want. The first question that I will ask whoever comes to me with that, if it's a simple pleasure, I will not take him as a client, first of all. But if they come to me and they're like, hey, I cannot stop smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, I will be like, okay, I'll take you. There's something that we have to work on. So there's a difference between a simple pleasure and not a simple pleasure, but a compulsion.
Yes.
So there is yes, that's why we are here. I can help someone with that. Zian can help them with other stuff. Michaela has her area of expertise. Brian has other gifts, and you, Myrna, have your own.
I'm perfect as we know.
Talents.
So yes. Okay. Well, and I do think, I mean, sometimes you think, oh, it's nice to have ice cream or it's nice to go out and have food. But if it's stress eating or it's an avoidant behavior because you can't handle something, well, it's not a simple pleasure then. You know, it's not the occasional and because I'm with a friend. And we remember the last time we baked an apple pie together and we're baking one now. We're chatting the story and it's relationship building. It's know you're feeding yourself sugar all the time because you're not managing some other part of your life. So I do think, Jonathan, to your point, that simple pleasures or just regular pleasures or interactive pleasures with your environment, however you see that, I think a component of it is occasional, not compulsory. So yeah. Well, okay, unless anybody has anything else to say, I think we did a first open roundtable.
It's good.
Yes,
Yes.
Zian.
I want to circle back to what Michaela and I were saying, and she was saying how, like, going back to how far too many people live in a delusion, or their self-esteem is not grounded in reality. She is right, and she actually mentioned something that I've known for a bit of time now. There are some people who do live in a delusion, and they are immersed in that reality like all the time.
Mhm.
However, what I understand is that an individual's identity, it's not static. It's not permanent. So one minute you're in a good place, you're feeling masculine or feminine, you're just in your natural feel good state, and then the next minute you might be playing the victim. You might be dealing with resentment. So identity is not stable. So it is definitely more precise to say that, as Michaela said, some people experience moments, or most people probably experience moments of that, but they're not completely immersed in that sense of delusion and pathological self-esteem.
Mhm.
However, that is what, with respect to the fact that they experience moments of that, that is what in the way of social media and interacting over social media, that is what you tend to see being projected from people. So it's easy to get the sense that people who project that live in that throughout the course of their lives, rather than being more balanced in the way of understanding that this is just what they're projecting, and they're experiencing moments of self-victimization, and they're just not showing that to you, but it is coming out in their extreme projection of behavior and their sense of superiority that they're projecting right then and there, because superiority externalized is inferiority internalized. So if you know what to look for, you can see that their need to tear other people down and protect their self-esteem by building themselves up unnaturally is a state of self-victimization.
Michaela, I saw the hearts go up. Did you do that on your phone?
There's like a react button on Zoom, so I just did the heart. I 100%
Oh, I see
agree.
the react button. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, how cool. Well,
Yeah.
Brian has said, Mr. Special K here, that at some point we'll do a roundtable that includes African love bombing. And so now that we know we have a heart reaction thing, that we have new technology for African love bombing in a future future roundtable. Brian, do you want to describe what that is, and then we'll sign off from this a lifetime roundtable?
Okay, that's kind of a strange way to end it, but I did study tribes.
It's
I did study,
perfect.
yeah, I did study tribes for a while. So there's various forms of tribal therapies, which I find very interesting. And I think I'd like to do videos on them for ALD if people want to learn about it or even try these practices themselves, because it's interesting to me. There was an African tribe that had a specific practice. I think this is super interesting. If someone in the tribe started doing like crimes, or they started, I don't know, fighting other people or stealing stuff or doing bad behavior in the tribe, their practice was they would surround the person, like get and make a circle around them, and they would just basically love them. They would just say, we remember all the good times with you. We've laughed together. We've danced together. We've hunted together. We've like reminding them of all the good times, saying we love you, man, or we love you, woman. Like we're here for you. Trust us. And their idea behind this was that people act out and behave badly when they feel unloved, when they feel unappreciated, unrespected, that's the root cause. So this was their solution. That's how they worked out these things. Like tribes had their own forms of therapy. They had their own therapists. It was usually called a shaman. They have their own ways of healing trauma, whether it's ayahuasca ceremonies, whether it's drum circles, whether it's chanting together. They had their ways of resolving traumas and communing and bonding and making someone feel like they're part of the tribe again. There's ancient therapies, which I think are also very cool to explore. So,
well, now that Michaela has taught us how to do this proper reaction, please like, subscribe, and share for the future love bombing episode.
I didn't know about that either. That's cool.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate all of your insight. Once again, I have learned so much just in this conversation. So until the next one, thanks everyone.
Thanks everybody. Great to have you guys.